Hi, I'm Barry Sahajian. This video is called Beginner Slap Day of 100. Some people think that it takes 100 hours of practice to get slap at a decent level, your tone, your technique, and a few licks. I decided I'm going to produce 100 slap bass video tutorials on YouTube. In 1981, I wrote a book called Thumb and Snap Bass. It was one of the first, if not the first, book ever written on slap bass. I wrote the book not to show off slap bass. I wrote it to actually teach, and it starts out from the very beginning, and it goes through about 100 licks. I followed that up a year later with Thumb and Snap Volume 2. A couple of years after that, 1984, I wrote a third book, Thumb and Snap Bass and Drums Volume 3. I'm going to use the material from these books, of course. There are hundreds of examples there, and they're nice and graduated, cover a lot of material, and I'm going to spend the next few months doing many tutorials, 100 to be exact, maybe more. So I ask that you might subscribe if you're interested in this. Please hit the bell to be notified of the new videos that come out, like and comment. Okay, let's get started with the technique and a few examples. Get you rolling pretty quick. First of all, let's go into the technique. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because you learn technique as you go through each example anyway, and you use different techniques perhaps for different types of lines. So let's just start with the basic thing you got to know that hangs the most of the people up is staying loose. It might be a good idea to listen to what everyone else recommends for technique and blend mine in, because I think I'm only going to show you the way I have learned and that works for me. I'm not going to try to show you how Billy Sheehan does it because I really don't know. I've never played with the thumb going down, so you may want to check with somebody else. I don't like that way anyway. I think it's limiting. So anyhow, if you start off, you must be loose. You have to be loose, and some of the people I have seen teaching this say it's like turning a doorknob. It is like turning a doorknob, but I'd like to add another thing. It's kind of like turning a doorknob, but it's really not quite perfectly in position for what I'd like to do. So what I suggest is like wringing your hand out. You know, you got water on your hand and you want to just wring them out. Now, you can't be stiff when you do that because then the water won't fall off. So you kind of go like this. This is where you want to be for looseness. So if you want to try doing that and then kind of incorporate a little of the door turning into it, and that'll be just about it. You know, but you've got to stay loose and you've got to concentrate on your hands and your lower arm and everything, and not try to tighten up. And your mind, too. Your mind tightens up. Everything's got to stay loose, and sometimes you have to check yourself out. So that's all I want to say. And then about that looseness, very important, though, because if you're stiff, you're going to sound stiff. Your time's going to sound stiff. You're not going to have much of a tone. You're not going to have a bounce that you need. And so that's very important. Next, you hit between the tip of the thumb and the knuckle. That's basically it. And you hit, and you have to bounce off. You got to bounce off, of course, because if you stay down there, all kinds of problems happen. You start ringing and so for a beginner, just play around with that on every string. And I gather some feedback, internal feedback to get you going for muscle memory and how it sounds and the tone, how hard, the velocity, how hard to hit, and experiment to where you want your sound. Some people like to slam it. That's your thing? Slam it, by all means. If you like a lighter touch and a real cleaner tone, that's what I like. That's what I prefer. So this is example 1. I'm going to play it for you, and then I'm going to break it down and show you some tips and suggestions on how you can do the best for yourself. Okay, you have a slap, you have a pop, and you have a hammer on. Check yourself out. If you can't handle the hammer on, then practice it separately. Like that. And the pop, the same thing. If you're having trouble with the pop, maybe try something like that, from the G to the D string and the A to the G string. If you're comfortable with everything, just play the line as is, and I'll point out a couple of things you can think about. First of all, loose. Think loose, and you got to think about that kind of, not fully, because you have to concentrate on everything at once, but you may want to think more about being loose at times in your practice, or the pop. How do you play the pop? You kind of use either index or the middle. Doesn't make any difference, whichever is comfortable for you. Velocity is another thing. How hard you're going to pull the string and release it to make the popping sound. And another thing you might not think about is the line is a quarter note, and then there's a rest. 1, 2. Now, if you cut that rest exactly at 2, believe it or not, it makes the line funkier. It has a better feel. Same thing with the pop. If you make it one whole beat, the pop and the slap, and you give yourself one whole beat of rest, that it makes it sound much better. So you have to kind of release your hand and mute. Example 2. Once again, there's going to be something a little different here. I'll play it for you, we'll talk about it, and I'll give you some suggestions and how-tos. Okay, what we have different here, the first beat is a short note, has a dot over the note. So the thing is, you have to hit it and then release real quick and kind of mute. You don't want to take your finger totally off the string. Second note is a full quarter note. Then we have our pop. After the pop, we have a quarter rest. Now, so we're taking in account, once again, keeping loose. And the left hand has got to release real quick and mute to make that dead note happen. On this one, to add a little extra to it, you can make the pop short, very short, like. That's articulation. You notice how just changing the pop from a quarter note long to a very short pop, it changes the whole character of the line, as does when you play the first beat very short, and you keep the second beat long, a whole quarter. That's adding articulation. Articulation is a key to making lines have character and make them go smooth and feel great. And you can't take it for granted. I know a lot of practice, you just play around and you don't even think about those things. If it happens, maybe you'll do it automatically, but in order to learn it, you have to be a little conscious of it to get it in your mind and how it sounds, and that's what this is all about. Number 3. On number 3, what's different is there's dead notes on the last measure. Let me play it for you, and then we'll go through it, nitpick at it a bit. Okay, we have a slap, long slap with a quarter rest, and then we hit a hammer on, and then a rest. And we do that 3 times. Then the last measure where we have something new, the dead notes with the thumb. If you want to take that measure and isolate it and just practice doing the dead notes nice and with a nice round deep sound. How I'm getting my deep sound is after I play the live note, the quarter note on C, I take the rest of my fingers and I mute. So you want it to sound like that, not wimpy with a harmonic or something. You know, these harmonics seem to sneak in everywhere unless you just really mute it properly. So we're going to try to isolate that and notice fingers 2, 3, and 4 resting lightly on the string. Those nasty harmonics want to get they're competing for the sound, but you want them to just be quiet. We will let you harmonics ring out and show off at another time. This concludes day 1 of 100. I'm going to do the next installment in 2 days. Not tomorrow, but the day after. So you have 2 days to practice and then come back and do the next video. I'm also going to put some play-alongs with drums to make it easier to feel the time on Patreon. You can go over there and download them. And that should be done within a few hours of the completion of this video. So I thank you for stopping by, and I hope to see you in a couple of days.